In 1978, a 15-year-old girl in the United States had her arms brutally chopped off and was thrown down a 9-meter cliff in the wilderness. Let's uncover how she survived this impossible nightmare. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's story. Today, I am going to share with you the incredible survival of a 15-year-old girl against unimaginable adversity. When speaking of Las Vegas, most people think of the world's most famous gambling city. However, it is also a normal town where hundreds of thousands of people live. A girl named Mary lived there. Her father was a mechanic, and her mother worked in a casino as a blackjack dealer. In 1978, Mary was 15 years old. Her parents divorced due to years of fractured relationship and constant arguing. Shortly after, her mother found a new boyfriend and remarried, giving Mary a stepfather. Mary absolutely hated him because he was a very rude man who spoke harshly, had a bad temper, and showed violent tendencies. Whenever an argument didn't go his way, he would resort to physical violence. Mary, on the other hand, had a rebellious personality much like the problem students at school. She was hot-tempered, extremely proud, and stubborn. Being 15 and in her rebellious phase, Mary and her stepfather fought constantly, creating chaos over the smallest things. Her mother tried to intervene, but it was completely useless. Eventually, their relationship became like fire and water. One day, after another explosive fight over something trivial, Mary slammed the door and ran away from home. She went straight to her 17-year-old boyfriend, Sam. She told him she couldn't stand her home anymore and challenged him to run away with her. Driven by his teenage pride, Sam agreed. The two minors hitchhiked over 600 kilometers to Sausalito, California. With little money, they lived a drifting life, sleeping in train stations, parks, and under bridges. Their journey took a dark turn when Sam was suddenly arrested by the police. Mary went to the police station and was shocked to learn that Sam had sexually assaulted a minor while they were working odd jobs. Furious, Mary broke up with him immediately and wandered alone. Hungry, cold, and facing the chilling autumn weather, she began to regret running away. However, her pride wouldn't let her return home in shame. Instead, she sought refuge at her grandfather's house in Berkeley, just a few miles away. When he opened the door, he was shocked and urged her to go home, telling her how desperately her parents were searching for her. Stubbornly, Mary refused and threatened to never see him again if he told her parents she was there. But after just 2 days of her grandfather constantly nagging her to go back to her worried family, Mary grew annoyed. On September 29th, she secretly ran away again without telling him. Attempting to walk the 600 kilometers back to Las Vegas alone, she quickly became exhausted. Along the way, she met 2 runaway boys heading south, and the 3 decided to hitchhike together. They ended up stranded in a desolate area with no houses or food. By 5 p.m., a small blue truck finally stopped. The driver, a heavy-set 50-year-old man named Lawrence in blue overalls, offered a ride but claimed he only had room for 1 person. The boys noticed the back seat was empty and warned her not to go. But Mary, too exhausted to walk, ignored their warnings and got into the stranger's truck. Lawrence seemed friendly, chatting with her along the way. Exhausted and hungry, Mary let her guard down and fell asleep. She woke up in the dead of night, realizing they were still driving and nowhere near a town. Her survival instincts kicked in, and as she sat up, she saw Lawrence glaring at her with a sinister smile. Mary tried to scream, but Lawrence slammed on the brakes. She smashed into the windshield, and before she could recover, Lawrence grabbed her neck and choked her until she passed out. When she regained consciousness, her hands were tied, and she realized she had been sexually assaulted in the back of the truck. The vehicle was parked in a dark, isolated forest. Terrified, Mary screamed for help, but Lawrence punched her and threatened to kill her if she made another sound. Desperate, Mary begged for her life, promising she would never call the police or tell anyone what happened. Lawrence stared at her, finally agreeing to let her go. He untied her hands and pulled her out of the vehicle. But it was a lie. He dragged her to the ground, pinned her arm down, pulled a sharp axe from his waist, and brought it down heavily. Mary felt a bone-piercing pain before her world went black. When she woke up, it was pitch dark. She couldn't see anything, but she felt a horrifying numbness. Reaching out, she discovered both of her hands were gone, chopped off at the wrists. The excruciating agony hit her, and she let out a heartbreaking scream. Covered in cold sweat and struggling to breathe, she felt the warm blood pouring from her severed wrists. She was too weak to even sit up. As the pain slightly numbed, she yelled for help, only to hear her voice echo. She realized she was inside a cave or drain in the middle of nowhere, and no one was coming to save her. A fierce will to live suddenly ignited inside her. Remembering a TV show where a man packed wounds with mud to stop bleeding, she endured the blinding pain and used the mud beneath her to seal her stumps. The mud dried into a hard crust, slowing the massive blood loss. She soon noticed a square exit leading to the forest. She was inside a concrete storm drain where Lawrence had dumped her, assuming she was dead. Terrified that the killer was still nearby, she swallowed her sobs and stayed completely silent until dawn. At daybreak, Mary dragged herself out of the drain, only to face a steep 9-meter slope. Using her elbows and sheer willpower, she agonizingly crawled upward. It took her all morning to conquer the slope and reach the edge of the highway. Fearing Lawrence might return, she forced herself to keep moving. Naked, barefoot, and crying, she walked for 4 kilometers. She kept her arms raised the entire time so the dried mud wouldn't fall off her wounds. Finally, a car with 2 young men approached. Mary tried to yell, but she was too weak. Seeing a naked, mutilated girl covered in blood and mud, the men were terrified and sped away. Mary fell into despair but kept walking. Eventually, a middle-aged couple drove by and slammed on their brakes. Using the absolute last bit of her strength, Mary whispered for help before collapsing into unconsciousness. She woke up in a hospital, surrounded by her crying parents, finally safe. The police took her detailed statement and description of the attacker. A week later, Lawrence, dubbed the Mad Axeman by the media, was captured. Police found Mary's hair and fingerprints in his truck, along with the bloody axe in his shed. In March 1979, Lawrence was convicted of kidnapping, sexual assault, and attempted murder. However, due to the lenient laws of that era regarding surviving victims, he was sentenced to only 14 years. Lawrence served just 8 years before being paroled. Completely unrepentant, he later brutally murdered a woman in Florida and was sentenced to death. When he was initially sentenced, Lawrence smirked at Mary's parents in the courtroom, whispering that he would finish the job when he got out. After his early release, he falsely claimed to the media that he was the victim, saying he only wanted to give a poor girl a ride. 10 years later, his evil nature resurfaced when he murdered a woman in Tampa, Florida. In April 1998, he was rightfully sentenced to death, but the monster died of an illness in prison before his execution. As for Mary, her survival remains an incredible story of human resilience and willpower. However, her nightmare began with a single, impulsive decision to get into a stranger's car out of frustration. I hope her story serves as a profound and terrifying reminder that we must constantly elevate our personal safety awareness to avoid falling into the hands of monsters.